All right, hello and welcome back to the Carl Jackson
Your daily
Show.
dose of objective truth in a world of confusion.
We're going to be talking about that. I'm going to break it
policy,
down.
because their policies are killing people. Very important. We've got to restore sanity in America, and I think it's going to start happening.
Okay, so the American Psychological Association, that is supposed to help people that are in mental distress, are doing the exact opposite. It's another woke institution that is hurting America. So now we have to worry about medicine. We have to worry about schools and universities, and sadly, we still do. We also have to worry about history and museums such as the Smithsonian, not to mention the WNBA right now that is driving me absolutely nuts. I wish you guys would turn it out or tune it off. They do not deserve your ratings whatsoever, in my opinion. But joining me now is a guest that I've been wanting to have on for some time, Adam Gillette. He's a president of Accuracy in Media, and they exposed some video, which we'll play for you momentarily, of an American Psychological Association, a rally or whatever they were having, a conference, if you will, where these people are injecting woke and anti-racism into everything. It's insane. Adam, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show. Thank you for taking the time today to join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So this was, and we'll play some of the video. Gabe, if you can get that ready. I don't even know what cut it is, but I don't necessarily want to play the entire thing, but I do want to give people a taste of it, and we'll go to it momentarily. But again, Adam Gillette joining me. Give us just a short synopsis of what you guys uncovered with the American Psychological Association there, Adam.
Well, we attended their annual conference, and this is a major organization. They have 190,000 members, a budget of around $150 million annually. You know, they are for psychology and mental health what the American Dental Association is, the bar, the American Medical Association. And instead of focusing on how to make better mental health professionals, they were teaching how to use cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy to advance DEI to make better white allies and to push anti-racism. Imagine you're spending $300 to sit on the couch. Maybe you're dealing with family, relationship, work issues. And instead of helping them deal with your trauma, they're trying to make you a better white ally.
Honestly, this is what the right has to come to realize. The left has beat us in so many avenues beyond just open borders and flooding the United States with a bunch of people that can't stand America. And now they're getting elected to, or at least winning primaries with the DSA, hopefully not getting elected to office, but many of them will in places like New York. But we have to worry about literally every institution. We have to examine brick by brick to make sure these guys haven't taken over. It's absolutely insane to me. Gabe, if you have the video ready, would you let me know? I'd like to run some of what Adam's organization uncovered. Okay, let's roll some of the video. Again, this is video of the American Psychological Association. This is the world's largest psychological association, pushing DEI practices, pushing racism, basically. Okay, let's roll it.
And the main focus is to help white individuals become better allies.
This is the American Psychological Association's annual conference. You'd think they'd be focused on training attendees to become better mental health professionals. Instead, they're focused on identity politics.
Or passive necessary to navigate existence, tolerate discomfort, and endure.
Okay, let's pause it there and let's go back to our guest, Adam. Let's go back to our guest again. I'm speaking with our guest, Adam Gillette. He is the president of Accuracy in Media. Adam, this is insane, and it never ceases to amaze me, quite frankly, that it seems to be a bunch of I don't know, liberal chicks that go to that go to colleges or higher education and get indoctrinated in this stuff. That's another concern for me. I know this is kind of off the plantation, if you will, but I'm concerned about depopulation rates and so on, et cetera. Who would want to marry these chicks? And these chicks don't want to marry anybody. I mean, this is absolutely insane, but they're worried about colonialism. They're worried about Palestine and Gaza, which Palestine doesn't exist, by the way, but they're worried about Gaza. This is absolutely insane. I would think that if you go and see one of these therapists, you probably end up worse off, not better off.
Well, and even more terrifying is that both of them, I don't think either work full-time in psychology with patients, thank goodness, but even worse, they work as educators. One of them, Yara McCowie, is at the University of Louisville. She runs something called the Color Lab. This is a state where DEI is illegal in higher education under the law. Yet when you look at her Color Lab online, you listen to the things that she says, it's only DEI. And listen to the verbiage she used. They were talking about how in the summer of 2020, as you recall, when cities were being burnt to the ground, she said we were insufficient, I guess, at tolerating discomfort. Imagine being a minority business owner who's got a 7-Eleven in St. Louis that was burnt to the ground. And this woman says you were insufficiently tolerating discomfort. These are sick, radicalized people using the verbiage of communists, talking about colonialism and whatnot, using ideas, Marxist ideas, into education, into mental health. It's literally crazy.
Do you think these people really know what they're talking about, these educators? I mean, are these people that are just so deep into academia, haven't really lived in the real world, experienced the real world, that they say all of these big words, but I mean, I can't imagine, or put it this way, I can't imagine going to that conference and walking out with anything that I could really understand or how to practice in my own practice if I were a psychologist, except to, I don't know, every white person that comes in, try to bash them somehow, some way. I don't even get most of the stuff they were saying. It's weird to me.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing to think about, because maybe if you're really established in your career, you know what you're doing, you've been a professional psychologist for years, you hear this stuff and you maybe tune it out. But what if you're new to the field of psychology? What if this is one of your first time attending the conference? Well, these are the authoritative voice in the field of psychology. You would assume that this is the way to do the profession. What if you're a student in one of their classes, and to get a degree, you have to sign on to this radicalism? Not radicalism being taught at Harvard or Berkeley Law, radicalism being taught at the University of Louisville, in a state, as we said, where DEI is illegal. So you're just going to assume this is part of the course. This is part of your job, that you have to be a radical for anti-racism. And for those who don't know, anti-racism sounds like a good thing. I'm not a racist. I must be an anti-racist. They define the world as everyone is either a racist or an anti-racist. And if you're not a racist, I'm not one, I guess, then you have to engage in social justice activism to fight against white supremacy, to fight against colonialism, to fight for all this Marxist stuff. Otherwise, you are, in their words, are a racist.
One of the things that concerns me as well, Adam, and I that's why I'm so grateful that you've exposed this video. And this is something that I don't think conservatives or Republicans are talking about, and not enough. I mean, there's so much going on the world stage, on the national stage. There's no doubt about it. Stuff like this gets lost, but it can't, because these are big fights that have to happen domestically. And one of the concerns that I have is these people are absolutely adamant. They never give up. They never stop pushing their agenda. And I'm like, okay, so where do conservatives go to make sure that we are just fighting just as hard for freedom. I don't know that places like that exist anymore. I'm a Christian, and I'm even concerned. I'm even concerned about the church. For God's sakes, I don't feel like enough churches are informing people, and not that they should be political whatsoever, but preach the truth, preach the gospel as it's outlined in the Bible, but also help people to understand how that should impact your worldview. So where do conservatives go where they're where there's just as much vigilance teaching freedom?
Well, we would say in this instance, go to nopoliticsinhealthcare.com, nopoliticsinhealthcare.com.
I love it.
You can send one message directly to all the relevant officials. If I'm going to see a psychologist, I would ask him, are you in the APA? Why? And also, I would make sure that your state enforces their DEI ban like Louisville. Perhaps most importantly, the sponsors include the Department of Justice. They're sponsoring this conference for the rich
Adam,
tax dollars.
Let's hold it there. I want to come right back with my guest. This is fascinating.
Half a century later, Watergate still shapes how Americans view power, scandal, and trust. This weekend, the America 250 film series presents Watergate Secrets and Betrayals. Revisit the investigation through archival footage, interviews, and new arguments about what happened. Watch Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
There are ways for white allies to speak up and use their voice loudly in the service of speaking out against racial injustice, while at the same time taking the lead of that cause and still, therefore, staying in their lane and not centering themselves. Both of these things need to be true at the same time. It's a dialectic, one of the core ideas of dialectical behavior theory. In fact, one of our first traits for white allies is called Step Up to That, where we use the skills from DBT to teach white allies how to balance this dialectic. In addition to DBT, it would be helpful to draw on other therapeutic modalities such as ACT, motivational interviewing, CBT, and mindfulness to help white allies overcome the various barriers that are a part of their allyship journey. Well, we knew that allies couldn't just use any old mindfulness or any old stress tolerance skill because the emotions they were experiencing were unique. They were group-level emotions, meaning they were emotions that were being activated by their racial group membership. To teach white allies how to regulate the anxiety that gets activated when their white racial identity is brought to the fore. A clear skill uses the principles of motivational interviewing to help white allies overcome ambivalence in their anti-racism commitment. And we compiled all of these skills into a book, which we called Beyond Fragility.
Okay. All right. We can, but man, I guess that's a great gig if you can get it there, Adam, to just teach people, to teach others, or to indoctrinate others that they're a bunch of racists. I'm curious. I can't believe that there's an entire conference dedicated to this nonsense. What do they tell the black therapist? Hey, you're superior. Just hate on white people and you're doing great in your practice. I mean, this is insane.
And of course, what's terrifyingly ironic is the level of racism that they speak to. You know, Martin Luther King had a dream of a colorblind society where we judged one another based on the content of our character. All these people want to focus on is the color of our skin. And I know it's a psychological conference, but if you look at what sociologists say, they consistently tell us that the best way to bring people together is to focus on what they have in common, which as Americans is so very much. Well, these people want to hyper focus on our differences in order to pit us against one another. And they want to use actual psychological tactics like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, things that were created to help people deal with depression and anxiety. They want to use those tactics to push divisive radical politics.
You just went to the place that I wanted to go to. I was like, what are they supposed to be doing? And I'm looking at some of your paperwork here. Again, a cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. They're using those to create better white allies. But as you said, dialectical behavior therapy was designed for people with borderline personality disorder, and the cognitive behavioral therapy was created to treat depression and anxiety. I can't imagine that they're doing anything but the opposite of just that. And I think one of the concerns too, and you talked about this, is how this filters into society from corporate America, obviously, to practices for psychologists, hospitals, even. This nonsense has permeated absolutely everything. And frankly, I don't know how we combat this except to make sure that where it is illegal, these people get the smackdown.
That's exactly it. And if it's not illegal there, it should be already. Let's remember as well that with many of them working as educators, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act prohibits people in public positions at universities from judging people or treating them differently based on their race. And that's all these people want to do. We've seen at Accuracy in Media, multiple universities get investigated by the Department of Justice because of their DEI activism. Arizona State is the most recent one, investigated by the feds because of what we uncovered. Well, as I mentioned, ironically, the Department of Justice is one of the sponsors of this conference. OpenAI sponsors this conference. The American Diabetes Association sponsors this conference. Why are these people funding radically divisive nonsense? All of them need to cut their funding today, and the Department of Justice, in addition to cutting their funding, needs to investigate.
Have you been able to get a hold of anyone in the administration and just ask that question? Why the heck are you guys funding this nonsense when you're when you're allegedly fighting against it? It makes no sense.
Well, I think honestly, because they so frequently investigate based off of our work, they don't literally want to coordinate with us directly.
Fair.
We don't communicate a whole ton directly with the Department of Justice. Brief things now and then. We've shared our information and our videos with attorneys general across the country that have done investigations. But one could only wonder why the heck our tax dollars are paying for this.
Is there, have you seen at least a decent effort maybe to defund some of these institutions, not just the APA, but I'm talking about some of these. I'm concerned about the schools and universities that are getting federal funding that are teaching anti-Semitism. I mean, it's insane, that are teaching wokeness, cultural woke, which is basically cultural Marxism. Have you seen the DOJ hit hard on this type of stuff? Is there any encouraging news on that end?
The DOJ is doing a good job, but there are so many universities. They investigated Arizona State, as I said, most recently in response to 8 investigations that we released there. They went after Ohio State, partially in response to one of our investigations. They went after the University of Washington. What we really need is more states to enact a Florida-style DEI ban that prohibits the promotion of identity politics. You can discuss controversial topics in the appropriate course, but you should never be promoting them. They don't need to be in math class. Most recently, North Carolina and Kansas did exactly that. North Carolina's ban even has a $10,000 fine for every time you break the law, which is fantastic. Many states, like North Carolina and Kansas initially, enacted DEI bans that weren't worth the paper they were printed on. No reporting mechanism, no consequences for breaking the law, and no effect on the curriculum at all. So Ohio's DEI ban, Utah, Indiana, absolutely worthless.
Really?
Yes. We need every state to do what North Carolina and Kansas have now done in enacting a Florida-style ban. Otherwise, we're continuing to pay for this on every level of education every day.
Can you tell me specifically what makes Ohio so weak? Ohio is one of these states. I live in Florida, so thank God we have Governor DeSantis. We won't have him long. There won't be another like him, in my opinion. But having said that, Ohio is one of these states that absolutely baffles me. There was a gentleman that was running for governor, I believe, at one point in time. And obviously he didn't win, but he brought to my attention, because I have family that's in Ohio. He brought to my attention the fact that Ohio is an overwhelmingly red state, and they run it like it's purple. It is the weirdest thing ever.
Well, we see frequently with legislation that these people pass laws to get votes in primaries as opposed to actually solving problems. Texas is the worst at it. Ohio, I think, does a lot better. than Texas on many things.
Wow.
Ohio enacted universal school choice. Granted, they did it after we exposed district after district breaking state law to put boys and girls sports and to push CRT. But Ohio enacted universal school choice and then strengthened it this past year. Texas finally got a minor school choice bill this year. But as I say, they passed these laws for primary votes. The Ohio DEI ban only affected departments and jobs. Well, they just changed the names of the departments and got new business cards and continued going on business as usual. The Ohio ban didn't touch curriculum at all. The same for Texas, Indiana, Utah, and the rest. Finally, Kansas and North Carolina, after we investigated university after university, prohibited identity politics from being promoted within the curriculum. Every state must take that approach.
That is shocking and very informative. Again, my guest, Adam Gillette. I'm shocked about Texas. Honestly, my jaw literally dropped. I can't believe it, but I guess that's why Texas gets people like Tallarico. But again, the president of Accuracy in Media. Let me ask you this: kids are obviously getting dumber than ever. I literally do not take people seriously, at least initially off the bat, when I hear they graduated from college. Frankly, even in K through 12 now, kids just seem to be dumber. Can you link it to this type of nonsense?
Well, by all objective measure, we've just produced, as you said, a generation that is less educated than any generation before by all the similar metrics. We spend more money than ever, but the kids are dumber than ever. And that's because instead of focusing on the real priorities in education, they focus on racial politics. They focus on radical environmentalism and feminism. Well, as bad as that is for education, how are we going to feel when that exact same approach comes to medicine, as we're seeing at this conference? Lives are literally at stake.
What, Adam, let me ask you this, because people need to hear this quickly here. What keeps you so motivated? Because honestly, people have to stay motivated and stay in this fight. Even I get tired of this nonsense, but we're going to lose our country if we don't stay in the fight.
That's right. Well, many of these people lose their jobs after they appear on our videos. A half a dozen administrators in the state of North Carolina, including the dean of students at UNC Asheville. And that's fun at a superficial level, but when it leads to laws changing like it did in North Carolina, that's a major win. But this is a battle on many fronts, and we've got to combat them everywhere.
All right. We've got people out there fighting. Make sure that you are one of them. Adam Gillette, president of Accuracy in Media. Thank you so much. Find him at Adam Gillette on X.